When Amanda Chen looked me straight in the eye and said some people just aren't cut out for the big leagues, Jessica, I never imagined that 18 months later, I'd be signing the papers to acquire her entire company. The woman who once questioned whether I had what it takes to succeed in tech was now sitting across from me in a Portland boardroom, forced to shake hands as my failed startup officially became her boss. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Jessica Martinez, though everyone calls me Jess, and this is the story of how the biggest professional humiliation of my life became the foundation for the sweetest victory I've ever tasted. It's about what happens when people underestimate you based on their own limited vision, and how sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting successful beyond their wildest dreams. 3 years ago, I was just another marketing specialist at TechFlow Solutions in Seattle, a mid-sized enterprise software company that prided itself on being established and reliable. What they really meant was outdated and resistant to change, but I didn't see it that clearly back then. I was 26, fresh out of my MBA program at the University of Washington, and absolutely convinced that hard work and good ideas would be enough to climb the corporate ladder. Every morning, my alarm would pierce through the Seattle drizzle at 5:30, and I'd roll out of my cramped one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. The place was tiny, barely 800 square feet, but it was mine, and I'd decorated it with inspirational quotes and vision boards that mapped out my 5-year plan. Marketing coordinator to marketing manager to marketing director to VP of marketing. I had it all figured out, or so I thought. My daily routine was a testament to determination. After a quick workout in the building's basement gym, I'd grab coffee from the little cart on Pine Street and catch the bus downtown to TechFlow's gleaming high-rise. 15 floors up, the marketing department occupied a corner of the building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. It should have been inspiring, but somehow the corporate beige walls and fluorescent lighting made even the most beautiful view feel sterile. TechFlow Solutions had been around for 12 years, built on the foundation of customer relationship management software for large enterprises. Our clients were Fortune 500 companies that needed robust, comprehensive systems to manage their customer data. The software worked, technically speaking, but it was clunky, expensive, and required extensive training for anyone to use effectively. Most importantly, it completely ignored the growing market of small and medium-sized businesses that were desperate for similar tools but couldn't afford our enterprise-level pricing or complexity. I'd been pointing this out in meetings for months. During our weekly marketing reviews, I'd present research showing how companies like HubSpot and Salesforce were gaining market share by offering user-friendly solutions to smaller businesses. I'd created detailed presentations about market trends, customer feedback, and competitive analysis that all pointed to the same conclusion: we were missing a massive opportunity. Amanda Chen, our marketing director, would listen to my presentations with the kind of polite attention you give to a child explaining their imaginary friend. She was 38, impeccably dressed, and had been with TechFlow since its early days. Her office walls were covered with awards for marketing excellence and photos of her speaking at industry conferences. To everyone at TechFlow, including me at first, she represented the pinnacle of marketing success. "Jessica," she'd say after my presentations, her voice carrying that particular tone of condescension that she'd perfected over the years, "you have to understand that our business model works. We've been profitable for over a decade serving enterprise clients. Why would we want to chase after small businesses that might not even be around next year?" The rest of the marketing team would nod along. Ryan Brooks, a marketing specialist who'd joined the company 6 months before me, had quickly learned that agreeing with Amanda was the fastest path to her approval. Sarah Kim, our social media coordinator, seemed to take particular pleasure in pointing out flaws in my ideas during team meetings. David Thompson from HR would occasionally sit in on our sessions, and his expression always suggested that he found my suggestions naive and unrealistic, but I kept pushing because I could see something they could. During my lunch breaks, I'd walk through Pioneer Square and Capitol Hill, popping into small businesses and talking to owners about their customer management challenges. The stories were always the same. They needed something to help them track customers, automate follow-ups, and understand their sales patterns, but everything on the market was either too expensive or too complicated for a team of 5 to 10 people to manage. There was Maria, who ran a boutique marketing agency and was managing client relationships through a combination of Excel spreadsheets and sticky notes. There was James, whose small tech startup was using 3 different tools that didn't talk to each other, creating more confusion than clarity. There was Linda, who owned a chain of yoga studios and was personally calling every customer to remind them about class packages and renewals. These conversations energized me in a way that TechFlow's corporate meetings never did. I'd return to the office with pages of notes and ideas, my mind racing with possibilities for simple, intuitive solutions that could transform how small businesses managed their customer relationships. I started drafting proposals for a simplified version of our software, something that could be launched as a separate product line targeting this underserved market. The proposal took me 3 months to perfect. I worked on it every evening after coming home from the office, sitting at my small kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of tea, researching market size, competitive pricing, feature requirements, and development costs. I interviewed dozens of small business owners, conducted surveys, and even built basic wireframes for what the user interface might look like. When I finally presented it to Amanda and the senior team, I was confident that I'd created something truly valuable. The presentation lasted 45 minutes, covering market opportunity, customer research, competitive landscape, revenue projections, and implementation timeline. I'd practiced it so many times that I could have delivered it in my sleep. The response was swift and brutal. "Jessica," Amanda said, barely glancing up from her phone as I concluded, "this is exactly the kind of thinking that shows you don't understand our business. Small businesses are small for a reason. They don't have the budget for quality software, they don't have the sophistication to use it properly, and they certainly don't have the longevity to justify the customer acquisition cost." Michael Rodriguez, TechFlow's CEO, leaned back in his chair with the expression of someone who'd just watched a mildly entertaining but ultimately pointless performance. "We've spent 12 years building our reputation in the enterprise market," he said. "Our clients trust us because we focus on their needs, not because we're chasing every shiny new trend that comes along." Ryan Brooks, ever eager to align himself with management, jumped in with his own critique. "I think what Jessica is missing is the complexity of software development. Building a new product line isn't just about identifying a market need. It's about resource allocation, support infrastructure, and brand positioning. We can't just decide to serve everyone." Sarah Kim nodded enthusiastically. "Plus, wouldn't a simpler product just cannibalize our existing sales? Why would enterprise clients pay premium prices if they know we're offering cheaper alternatives?" I tried to address their concerns, explaining how separate branding and distinct feature sets could prevent cannibalization, how the market research showed clear demand, how the development costs could be minimized by leveraging our existing codebase. But I could see in their faces that the decision had already been made. They weren't evaluating my proposal on its merits, they were dismissing it because it challenged their comfortable status quo. The meeting ended with Amanda's suggestion that I focus on supporting our current marketing initiatives rather than trying to reinvent our entire business strategy. David Thompson from HR pulled me aside afterward to remind me that ambitious thinking is valuable, but it needs to be channeled in productive directions that align with company goals. Walking back to my desk that afternoon, I felt a familiar mixture of frustration and determination. This wasn't the first time my ideas had been dismissed, and I was beginning to recognize a pattern. At TechFlow, innovation wasn't rewarded, conformity. The people who got promoted were the ones who executed existing strategies more efficiently, not the ones who questioned whether those strategies were still relevant. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was right about the market opportunity. Every piece of research I'd done, every conversation with small business owners, every analysis of competitor growth, it all pointed to the same conclusion. There was a massive underserved market of businesses that needed customer management solutions, but were being ignored by companies like TechFlow because they didn't fit the traditional enterprise mold. That evening, I called my best friend Maya Patel, who worked as a software engineer at a startup in South Lake Union. We'd been friends since college, bonding over late-night study sessions and a shared frustration with professors who seemed more interested in theory than practical application. Maya had always been the more technically minded of the two of us, while I gravitated toward the business and marketing side of things. They shot it down again? Maya asked after I'd recounted the meeting. We were sitting in her cozy house in Fremont, sharing a bottle of wine and a pizza from our favorite place down the street. Completely, I said, stabbing at a piece of pepperoni with more force than necessary. Amanda looked at me like I'd suggested we start selling ice cream instead of soft. And the worst part is, I know I'm right about this. I can feel it. Maya nodded thoughtfully. She'd heard me talk about this idea for months, and as a developer she understood the technical feasibility in a way that my marketing colleagues did. You know, she said slowly, maybe the problem isn't your idea, maybe the problem is that you're trying to execute it in a place where it doesn't fit. What do you mean? TechFlow built their entire identity around being the premium enterprise solution. They've spent 12 years telling their clients that complexity equals quality, that expensive means better. Your idea doesn't just challenge their product strategy, it challenges their core business philosophy. She was right, of course. TechFlow's culture was built on the assumption that bigger was always better, that enterprise clients were inherently more valuable than smaller ones, that simplicity was somehow inferior to complexity. My proposal wasn't just suggesting a new product, it was suggesting a fundamentally different approach to business. So what do? I asked, keep my head down and hope that eventually they'll come around. Maya shook her head. You know what I think you should stop trying to convince them and start proving them wrong. Her words stuck with me as I walked home that night through the quiet streets of Fremont. The Seattle drizzle had turned into actual rain, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing with possibilities, with scenarios I'd never seriously considered before. What if Maya was right? What if instead of trying to change TechFlow from the inside, I focused on building something from the outside? The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I'd never seriously considered starting my own company. I'd always assumed that entrepreneurship was for people with business degrees from Ivy League schools, or tech prodigies who could code in their sleep, or people with rich parents who could fund their experiment. I was just a marketing specialist from a middle-class family in Tacoma, working at a mid-tier software company, and living paycheck to paycheck in an expensive city. But as I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I found myself thinking about all the small business owners I'd interviewed, all the problems I'd identified, all the solutions I'd proposed that had been dismissed without serious consideration. What if I could actually build something that would help them? What if I could prove that there really was a market for simple, affordable customer management tools? The next few weeks passed in a blur of routine office work and clandestine research. During the day, I dutifully executed Amanda's marketing campaigns, updated social media calendars, and analyzed metrics for our existing. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Enterprise clients. But every evening I dove deeper into market research, competitive analysis, and business plan. I started attending startup meetups around Seattle, events I'd never paid attention to before. The energy was completely different from TechFlow's corporate meetings. People talked about problems they wanted to solve, not just strategies they wanted to execute. They shared failures and lessons learned, not just successes and achievements. They asked questions like, how can we make this better, instead of how can we avoid changing. At one particularly inspiring meetup in a converted warehouse in Georgetown, I listened to a panel of female entrepreneurs discussing the challenges of building tech companies. One of them, a woman named Jennifer Wilson who'd started a successful marketing automation company in Austin, talked about the importance of solving real problems for real people, even if those people weren't the customers that traditional companies wanted to pursue. The best business opportunities, she said, are often hiding in the gaps that established companies ignore. They're too focused on their existing customers to see the potential customers who don't fit their current model. Her words resonated so strongly that I approached her afterward to introduce myself. Jen was warm and approachable, with an infectious enthusiasm for talking about business challenges and solutions. When I mentioned my research into small business customer management needs, her eyes lit up. That's exactly the kind of thinking the market needs, she said. I've been saying for years that someone is going to make a fortune by simplifying enterprise tools for smaller businesses. The technology exists, the market exists. but most companies are too proud or too comfortable to pursue it. We exchanged contact information, and she encouraged me to reach out if I ever wanted to discuss the idea further. As I walked back to my car that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months at TechFlow, genuine excitement about the future. But it wasn't until the following Tuesday that everything changed completely. I was in the break room, refilling my coffee cup and half listening to a conversation between Amanda and Ryan about our upcoming quarterly review. They were discussing which team members had shown the most strategic thinking and cultural alignment over the past few months. Jessica works hard, Amanda was saying, but she just doesn't seem to grasp the bigger picture. She's always pushing these ideas about expanding into markets that frankly aren't worth our time. It's like she doesn't understand that our success comes from focusing on quality clients, not chasing after every small business that wants enterprise-level tools at startup prices. Ryan's response made my blood run cold. I think the problem is that she's just not cut out for the big leagues. She has this small-town mentality where she thinks every customer matters equally. That might work at a mom-and-pop shop, but it's not how you build a real business. Exactly, Amanda agreed. Some people just aren't built for enterprise-level thinking. They get distracted by every sob story instead of focusing on what actually drives revenue. Honestly, I'm not sure she's going to work out long-term. I stood frozen behind the refrigerator, coffee cup trembling in my hand. They were talking about me like I was some naive idealist who didn't understand business fundamentals. Worse, they were suggesting that my concern for underserved customers was somehow a weakness, a character flaw that made me unsuitable for real business. The conversation continued for another few minutes, but I'd heard enough. I managed to slip out of the break room without being seen, and somehow made it back to my desk without breaking down. For the rest of the day I went through the motions of work while my mind replayed their words over and over. That evening I called Maya and recounted the entire conversation. By the time I finished I was crying with a mixture of anger and humiliation. They think I'm some small-town dreamer who doesn't understand how business works, I said. They think caring about small businesses makes me weak, like I'm not sophisticated enough to focus on quality clients. Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady and determined. Jess, you know what this is? This is the best thing that could have happened to you. How is being humiliated by my boss the best thing that could have happened? Because now you know exactly what you're up against. You know that they're never going to respect your ideas, no matter how good they are. You know that they're never going to see the opportunity you see. And most importantly, you know that they're completely wrong about you. She was right, of course. The conversation in the break room had crystallized something that had been building for months. I wasn't failing at TechFlow because I lacked ability or vision. I was failing because I was trying to succeed in an environment that didn't value what I had to offer. That night I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and started writing, not a business plan or a market analysis, but a simple list of everything I believed about business, about customers and about success. By the time I finished I had filled 3 pages with thoughts that had been swirling in my head for months. At the top of the first page I wrote, "Every customer matters, every problem deserves a solution. Simple doesn't mean inferior." Looking at those words I realized that Amanda and Ryan were wrong about more than just my abilities. They were wrong about what makes a business successful. They were wrong about who deserves to be served, and they were wrong about what the future of technology would look like. For the first time since starting at TechFlow, I felt completely clear about what I needed to do next. The question wasn't whether I should start my own company, it was how quickly I could make it happen. The next morning I sent Jen Wilson an email with the subject line, "Ready to talk about that small business CRM idea." Within hours she'd responded with her phone number and a time to talk. Our conversation lasted 3 hours and covered everything from technical architecture to funding strategies to market positioning. By the end we'd outlined the basic framework for what would eventually become Innovate Lab, though we didn't have a name for it yet. "I've been looking for the right co-founder for something exactly like this," Jen said as we wrapped up. "I have the technical background and some startup experience, but I need someone who really understands the market and can lead the business development side. Would you be interested in exploring this seriously?" My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it through the phone. "Yes," I said without hesitation. Absolutely yes. That afternoon I submitted my 2 weeks notice to TechFlow. Amanda seemed more relieved than surprised, though she made a show of expressing concern about my career trajectory and suggesting that I was making a mistake by leaving such a stable opportunity. I hope you'll reconsider, she said during our exit interview. The startup world is incredibly challenging, especially for someone without extensive business experience. You might find that the corporate environment offers more support and guidance than you realize. I thanked her for her concern and assured her that I'd given the decision careful thought. What I didn't tell her was that in 2 weeks, I'd be moving to Austin to co-found a company that would eventually prove everything she believed about business was wrong. As I cleaned out my desk on my last day, Ryan stopped by to wish me luck. I hope it works out, he said, though his tone suggested he had serious doubts. Just remember that most startups fail. There's no shame in coming back to the corporate world if things don't pan out. I smiled and thanked him for the advice. What I wanted to say was that some things are worth risking failure for, especially when the alternative is accepting someone else's limited vision of what's possible. Walking out of TechFlow's office building for the last time, I felt lighter than I had in months. The Seattle skyline looked different somehow, less intimidating, more full of possibilities. I had $10,000 in savings, a brilliant co-founder who believed in the vision, and a market full of customers who were waiting for someone to build exactly what we had in mind. Amanda Chen might have thought I wasn't cut out for the big leagues, but she was about to learn that she'd been measuring the wrong game entirely. The flight from Seattle to Austin felt like stepping through a portal into a different universe. As the plane descended over the Texas hill country, I pressed my face to the window and watched the sprawling city unfold below me. Austin looked nothing like Seattle's towering downtown core and waterfront geography. Instead, I saw a city that seemed to breathe and expand organically, with clusters of gleaming office buildings scattered among tree-lined neighborhoods and winding rivers. Jen Wilson was waiting for me at baggage claim, holding a handmade sign that read "Future CEO" in purple mark. She was exactly as I'd imagined from our video calls, mid-30s, shoulder-length brown hair and an energy that seemed to fill the entire arrivals area. When she spotted me, her face broke into the kind of genuine smile that immediately put me at ease. "Jessica Martinez," she called out, weaving through the crowd of travelers. "Welcome to Austin, where weird dreams become billion-dollar companies." The drive from the airport to my temporary housing gave me my first real taste of Austin's culture. Unlike Seattle's understated tech scene, everything here felt more vibrant and unapologetically optimistic. We passed food trucks parked next to gleaming office complexes, street art that covered entire building walls, and coffee shops with names like Caffeine and Courage and Breakthrough Brew. "The thing about Austin," Jen explained as we navigated through traffic on I-35, "is that nobody here thinks small. It's not about playing it safe or following established rules. People come here to build something that's never existed before." She'd arranged for me to stay in a furnished corporate apartment in East Austin while I searched for something permanent. The unit was sparse but comfortable, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the downtown skyline. More importantly, it was 10 minutes from the hub, the co-working space where we'd begin building our company. The hub occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse in what locals called the Innovation District. Walking through the front doors, I was immediately struck by the energy. Unlike TechFlow's sterile corporate environment, this space buzzed with collaboration and creativity. Teams huddled around whiteboards, covered in diagrams and flowcharts. Individuals worked intently at standing desks with multiple monitors displaying code, designs, and spreadsheets. The walls were covered with motivational quotes, startup success stories, and a massive mural that read, "Build something that matters." Our workspace consisted of 2 adjacent desks in an open area near the back corner. It wasn't much, barely enough room for our laptops, notebooks, and the small whiteboard Jen had claimed from the common area, but it felt like the center of infinite possibility. "This is where the magic begins," Jen said, dropping her backpack onto one of the desks. 2 women, 2 laptops, and the absolute certainty that we're going to change how small businesses think about customer relationships. Our first week was a whirlwind of market validation and product planning. While Jen dove into technical architecture and development timelines, I focused on refining our understanding of the customer problem,
Austin turned out to be the perfect laboratory for this research. The city was packed with exactly the kind of small and medium-sized businesses we wanted to serve: creative agencies, consulting firms, e-commerce startups, local service providers, and innovative restaurants that were pioneering new approaches to customer engagement. I spent my days walking through different neighborhoods, introducing myself to business owners, and asking about their customer management challenges. The pattern was remarkably consistent, regardless of industry. Everyone was struggling with the same fundamental problem. They needed to maintain meaningful relationships with their customers, but the available tools were either too expensive, too complicated, or too generic to be useful. At Moonshine Marketing, a boutique agency in the Rainy Street district, I met with the founder, Patricia Hernandez, who was managing 37 clients using a combination of Google Sheets, Post-it notes, and an elaborate system of calendar reminders. She spent 3 hours every Monday morning updating spreadsheets and cross-referencing information that should have been automated. "I know there has to be a better way," Patricia told me over coffee at a nearby cafe. "But everything I've looked at requires a computer science degree to set up and costs more than my monthly rent. I just need something simple that helps me remember when to follow up with clients and track which services they've purchased." At Rebel Robotics, a small manufacturing startup, the founder, Kevin Chang, was using 3 different software platforms that couldn't communicate with each other. His customer data was scattered across a CRM system that was designed for enterprise sales teams, an email marketing tool that couldn't connect to his order management system, and a customer service platform that required customers to create separate accounts just to submit support requests. "The worst part," Kevin explained during our meeting in his cluttered office, "is that I spend more time managing the software than actually serving my customers. Last week I had to manually enter the same customer information into 4 different systems just to process one order and send a follow-up email." The stories were variations on the same theme everywhere I went. Business owners who were brilliant at their core services, design, consulting, manufacturing, hospitality, but were drowning in administrative overhead because no one had built tools that matched their actual workflows and budget constraints. What made these conversations even more valuable was discovering how different the Austin business community felt compared to Seattle's tech ecosystem. In Seattle, I'd often encountered a kind of defensive skepticism when I approached business owners for research. People seemed suspicious of outsiders asking questions about their operations, as if revealing their challenges might somehow compromise their competitive position. In Austin, the response was completely different. Business owners were eager to share their experiences, offer suggestions, and even connect me with other entrepreneurs who might be facing similar challenges. There was a collaborative spirit that I hadn't experienced before, a genuine belief that helping each other succeed would ultimately benefit the entire community. This cultural difference became even more apparent when I started attending Austin's startup and business networking events. Seattle's tech meetups had always felt formal and hierarchical, with clear divisions between founders, employees, investors, and service providers. Conversations tended to focus on funding rounds, market share, and competitive positioning. Austin's networking scene was refreshingly authentic. At weekly meetups like Startup Drinks and Founders Forum, I found myself in conversations about real business challenges, creative solutions, and collaborative opportunities. People introduced me to potential customers, shared resources and contacts, and offered genuine advice without expecting anything in return.
It was at one of these events, a Thursday evening gathering at a barbecue restaurant in South Austin, that I met Carlos Rodriguez, who would become one of our first angel investors. Carlos had sold his previous startup to a larger tech company and was now actively investing in early-stage businesses that solved real problems for underserved markets. "The customer management space is ripe for disruption," he told me after I'd explained our vision. "But most companies are trying to build the next Salesforce instead of building the first solution that actually works for normal businesses. What you're describing sounds like exactly what the market needs." While I was validating the market opportunity, Jen was tackling the technical challenges of building a platform that could deliver enterprise-level functionality with consumer-level simplicity. Her background as a software engineer at several Austin startups had given her deep experience in building scalable systems, but this project required a different approach than anything she'd worked on before. The traditional approach to business software, she explained during one of our evening planning sessions, is to build every possible feature and then charge customers based on how many features they use. That works for enterprise clients, who have dedicated IT teams to manage implementation and training. She pulled up a whiteboard covered with user interface mock-ups and system architecture diagrams. But for small businesses, that approach is completely backward. They don't want more features, they want better outcomes. They don't want customization options, they want something that works perfectly right out of the box. Jen's technical vision was as elegant as it was ambitious. Instead of building a traditional CRM system with dozens of modules and configuration options, we would create an intelligent platform that learned from customer behavior and automatically suggested the most relevant action. Rather than forcing users to input data into complex forms, the system would integrate with tools they were already using and extract insights from their existing workflows. The artificial intelligence component was particularly innovative. While companies like Salesforce were adding AI features to help enterprise sales teams analyze vast amounts of data, we were designing AI to help small business owners who didn't have vast amounts of data to begin with. Our algorithms would identify patterns in customer communication, predict the best times to follow up, and suggest personalized messages based on previous interaction. Imagine a restaurant owner who wants to re-engage customers who haven't visited in 3 months. Jen said, sketching out a user interface on the whiteboard. Instead of making her analyze spreadsheets and create email campaigns, the system would automatically identify those customers, draft personalized messages based on their previous orders and preferences, and schedule the outreach for optimal timing. The technical architecture required balancing several competing priorities. The system needed to be sophisticated enough to provide genuinely valuable insights, but simple enough that a busy entrepreneur could start seeing benefits within minutes of signing up. It needed to integrate with dozens of different tools and platforms, but maintain the kind of security and reliability that businesses demand for their customer data. Most challenging of all, it needed to be affordable for businesses that might be spending less on all their software tools, combined than enterprise companies spend on a single user license for traditional CRM systems. Our pricing strategy emerged from weeks of customer interviews and competitive analysis. Instead of following the traditional model of charging per user per month, we decided to offer a flat monthly rate based on the number of customers in their database. A business with fewer than 500 customers could use our full platform for $49 per month. A business with up to 2,000 customers would pay $99 per month. Beyond that, pricing would scale gradually but always remain a fraction of what they'd pay for comparable enterprise solutions. The beautiful thing about this model, I explained to Carlos during one of our follow-up meetings, is that it aligns our success with our customers' success. As their business grows and they acquire more customers, they naturally move into higher pricing tiers. But they're never paying for features they don't need or users who aren't actively using the system. The financial projections were compelling even with conservative assumptions about customer acquisition and retention. If we could sign up just 500 customers in our first year, we'd generate enough revenue to support a small team and continue product development. With 2,000 customers, we'd be profitable and ready to scale marketing efforts. With 5,000 customers, we'd have the resources to expand into related markets and build additional product lines. But beneath the spreadsheets and business plans, what really drove me was the memory of every conversation I'd had with frustrated business owners who were wasting time and energy on tools that didn't serve their needs. Every hour that Patricia spent updating spreadsheets instead of serving clients was an hour that better software could give back to her. Every customer that Kevin lost because of disconnected systems was a relationship that better technology could have preserved. This wasn't just about building a successful company, it was about proving that business success could come from solving real problems for real people, even if those people didn't fit the traditional definition of valuable customer. The irony wasn't lost on me that Amanda Chen and Ryan Brooks would probably dismiss our target market for exactly the same reasons they'd dismissed my proposal at TechFlow. These weren't Fortune 500 enterprises with million-dollar software budget. They were family-owned restaurants and two-person consulting firms, and ambitious entrepreneurs bootstrapping their way to success, but that was exactly what made them perfect customers for what we were building. They needed solutions, not status symbols. They valued results, not complexity. And they were eager to support companies that actually understood their challenges, instead of trying to force them into one-size-fits-all enterprise models. As our first month in Austin came to a close, Jen and I had established the foundation for everything that would follow. We had a clear understanding of the market opportunity, a technical architecture that could scale from hundreds to hundreds of thousands of users, a pricing model that made sense for our target customers, and the beginning of a network that would support our growth. Most importantly, we had absolute confidence that we were building something the market genuinely needed. Every customer interview, every competitive analysis, and every technical decision reinforced our belief that simple, intelligent, affordable customer management tools would transform how small businesses operated. The contrast with my experience at TechFlow couldn't have been starker. Instead of spending months trying to convince skeptical colleagues that an opportunity existed, I was surrounded by evidence that customers were eager for exactly what we planned to build. Instead of fighting against organizational inertia and entrenched thinking, I was working with a co-founder who shared my vision and had the skills to execute it. Austin had given me something that Seattle never could: a community that believed in building solutions for everyone, not just the customers who were easiest to serve or most profitable to pursue. Standing on the balcony of my temporary apartment one evening, looking out over the city lights and listening to the live music drifting up from the bars and restaurants below, I realized that leaving TechFlow hadn't just been about escaping a bad situation. It had been about finding the right environment to build something meaningful. Amanda Chen might have thought that caring about small businesses made me unsuitable for enterprise-level thinking, but she'd fundamentally misunderstood what enterprise-level thinking actually meant. Real business leadership wasn't about excluding potential customers, it was about finding innovative ways to serve markets that others had ignored. In 6 months, we'd have our first prototype ready for beta testing. In 12 months, we'd launch publicly and start acquiring our first paying customer. And eventually, if everything went according to plan, we'd prove that the small businesses Amanda had dismissed as not worth our time represented one of the most valuable and underserved markets in the entire software industry. But first, we had to build the product that would make all of this possible. And that work was about to begin in earnest. The email from TechCrunch arrived on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. I was sitting in my favorite corner of Radio Coffee on Barton Springs Road, reviewing user feedback from our latest beta release, when my phone buzzed with a notification that would change everything. The subject line read, "Austin's Startup Innovate Lab named to companies to watch list for revolutionary AI-powered customer platform." 6 months of 18-hour days, countless customer interviews, and relentless product iteration had culminated in this moment of recognition. The article described our platform, which we'd eventually named Pulse AI, as the first customer relationship management system designed specifically for the way modern small businesses actually operate. But more than the recognition itself, it was the timing that made this moment so surreal. That same morning, I'd received a LinkedIn message from Sarah Kim, my former colleague at TechFlow. The message was brief and professional, but the subtext was impossible to miss. "Saw the TechCrunch article about your company. Congratulations on the coverage. Hope you're doing well in Austin." The irony was exquisite. Sarah, who had spent countless meetings at TechFlow pointing out flaws in my ideas and questioning whether small businesses represented a viable market, was now reaching out after seeing our company featured in one of the tech industry's most respected publications. The same platform that Amanda Chen had dismissed as unrealistic was being praised by industry analysts as an innovative solution to a massive market opportunity. I screenshot the message and sent it to Maya, adding a simple caption, "Remember when they said I didn't understand enterprise-level thinking?" Her response came back immediately, "Sweet, sweet vindication. But also, congratulations on actually building something amazing." Maya was right, of course. The real satisfaction wasn't in proving my former colleagues wrong, it was in proving that our vision had been correct all along. Every customer who signed up for Pulse AI, every small business owner who told us how our platform had simplified their operations, every success story from our user community validated the market opportunity that TechFlow had been too narrow-minded to see. The TechCrunch article had immediate and dramatic effects on our business. Within hours of publication, our website traffic increased by over 400. Most remarkably, we started receiving messages from other software companies expressing interest in partnership opportunities and potential acquisition discussion. But the most unexpected response came from enterprise clients who had discovered our platform through the coverage and wanted to implement it for their own small business divisions or subsidiary company. These were exactly the types of large corporations that TechFlow courted. But they were approaching us because we'd built something that their existing enterprise solutions couldn't provide. Jennifer Walsh, the VP of Digital Strategy at Meridian Holdings, a Fortune 500 company with over 30 subsidiary brands, scheduled a call to discuss implementing Pulse AI across their portfolio of smaller acquisitions. During our conversation, she explained that their corporate CRM system worked well for their main business units, but was completely overwhelming for the small companies they'd acquire. We've been looking for a solution that could give our smaller brands the same customer management capabilities as our enterprise divisions, without requiring them to completely overhaul their existing processes, Jennifer explained. Your platform seems to bridge that gap perfectly. The enterprise interest created an unexpected strategic opportunity. Instead of competing directly with companies like Salesforce for large corporate accounts, we could position ourselves as the preferred solution for enterprises that needed to serve diverse business units with varying complexity requirements. It was a market niche that established players had completely overlooked because they were too focused on maximizing revenue per client rather than solving actual business problems. Jen and I spent long evenings at the hub discussing how to capitalize on this momentum without losing focus on our core mission. The attention was gratifying, but it also brought new pressures and decisions that we'd never anticipated facing so early in our company's development. The danger, Jen warned during one of our strategy sessions, is that we start chasing every opportunity instead of staying focused on what we do best. Enterprise clients can be seductive because they represent large revenue numbers, but they also come with expectations and requirements that could pull us away from our original vision. She was absolutely right. One of TechFlow's fundamental mistakes had been assuming that serving enterprise clients automatically made them a superior company. But enterprise clients often demanded extensive customization, lengthy implementation processes, and dedicated support resources that could drain a startup's energy and focus. Our success with small and medium-sized businesses came precisely because we'd refused to make those compromises. We'd built a platform that worked brilliantly right out of the box, required minimal setup and training, and delivered immediate value to customers who were too busy running their businesses to become software power users. The challenge was finding ways to serve larger clients without abandoning the principles that had made us successful. After extensive discussion and customer research, we developed a hybrid approach that would become one of our key competitive advantages. For enterprise clients like Meridian Holdings, we offered what we called distributed Pulse AI, multiple instances of our standard platform that could be customized for different business units, while maintaining centralized reporting and administration capability. This allowed large companies to give their subsidiaries access to simple, effective customer management tools, while still maintaining corporate oversight and data integration. The pricing model was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of complex enterprise licensing structures, we charged a flat fee per business unit, based on their individual customer database size. A Fortune 500 company with 10 subsidiary brands would pay the same rate as 10 independent small businesses with equivalent customer bases. This approach eliminated the lengthy procurement processes and budget negotiations that typically characterized enterprise sales, while ensuring that pricing remained fair and transparent. Our first major enterprise implementation was with Meridian Holdings, and the results exceeded everyone's expectations. Their subsidiary brands saw an average 23% increase in customer retention rates within the first quarter of using Pulse AI. More importantly, the implementation required less than 2 weeks per business unit,
compared to the 6 to 12-month implementations typical of traditional enterprise CRM. The success stories from Meridian's implementation became powerful case studies that attracted attention from other large corporations with similar challenges. Within 3 months of the TechCrunch article, we'd signed contracts with 8 Fortune 500 companies, representing over 40 individual business units. But the growth that excited me most wasn't coming from enterprise clients. It was coming from the small businesses that had always been our primary focus. Word-of-mouth recommendations from satisfied customers were driving a steady stream of new sign-ups, and our customer retention rates consistently exceeded. These weren't businesses that had been convinced to try our platform through aggressive sales tactics. They were entrepreneurs and small business owners who genuinely found value in what we'd built. Maria Santos, who owned a boutique event planning company in Dallas, sent us a handwritten thank you note explaining how Pulse AI had helped her business recover from the challenges of the pandemic. Before your platform, she wrote, I was losing track of potential clients and forgetting to follow up with previous customers. Now I can focus on creating amazing events, while your system takes care of maintaining relationships and identifying new opportunities. Stories like Maria's reminded me why we'd started Innovate Lab in the first place. This wasn't about proving points or achieving recognition. It was about creating tools that genuinely improved people's lives and businesses. The rapid growth also brought new challenges that tested our ability to scale while maintaining the quality and simplicity that had made us successful. Our customer support volume increased exponentially, requiring us to hire additional team members and develop more sophisticated help systems. Our technical infrastructure needed constant upgrades to handle increasing data loads and user activity. Most importantly, we had to resist the temptation to add features and complexity that might compromise the elegant simplicity of our original platform. Jen proved to be masterful at managing these technical scaling challenges. She'd learned from her experience at previous startups that premature optimization could be just as dangerous as inadequate preparation. Instead of trying to build systems that could handle theoretical future growth, she focused on creating architecture that could scale incrementally as our actual user base expanded. The key, she explained to our growing development team, is building systems that can grow without breaking, but that don't sacrifice performance or simplicity in service of hypothetical future requirements. Her approach proved prescient as our user base grew from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of active customers. Each scaling milestone brought new technical challenges, but our foundational architecture remained stable and efficient throughout the growth process. My role evolved significantly as the company expanded. Instead of conducting individual customer interviews, I was now managing a customer success team that maintained relationships with hundreds of businesses. Instead of creating marketing materials myself, I was overseeing a marketing department that included content creators, digital advertising specialists, and partnership managers. But I made sure to maintain direct contact with our customer community through regular feedback sessions and user group meetings. These interactions kept me grounded in the real-world problems we were solving and helped prevent the kind of disconnection from actual customers that had plagued my experience at TechFlow. During one particularly memorable user group meeting in Austin, I had the opportunity to hear directly from dozens of small business owners about how Pulse AI had affected their operations. The stories varied widely in terms of industry and business model, but the themes were remarkably consistent. Restaurant owners talked about how automated follow-up campaigns had brought back customers who might otherwise have been forgotten. Consulting firms explained how intelligent project tracking had improved their client relationships and reduced administrative overhead. E-commerce entrepreneurs described how predictive analytics had helped them identify their most valuable customers and tailor their marketing efforts accordingly. What struck me most about these conversations was how different they felt from the customer meetings I'd attended at TechFlow. At TechFlow, customer interactions were formal presentations where account managers demonstrated features and capabilities, while clients asked technical questions about integration and customization. Our user group meetings felt more like community gatherings where entrepreneurs shared success stories, offered advice to each other, and collaborated on creative ways to leverage our platform for their specific business challenges. The atmosphere was supportive and collaborative rather than transactional. This sense of community became one of our most valuable competitive advantages. While larger software companies focused on feature comparisons and pricing negotiations, we built genuine relationships with customers who became advocates for our platform within their own professional network. The referral program we launched in month 8 generated over 40% of our new customer acquisitions, with existing users enthusiastically recommending Pulse AI to their fellow entrepreneurs. These weren't incentivized referrals driven by monetary rewards, they were organic recommendations from business owners who genuinely believed our platform could help their peers succeed. The financial metrics were equally impressive. Our monthly recurring revenue grew from $15,000 to over $200,000 in less than 12 months. Our customer acquisition costs remained low because word-of-mouth marketing was more effective than paid advertising. Most importantly, our customer lifetime value continued to increase as users discovered new ways to leverage our platform for their growing businesses. But the metric that meant the most to me was customer satisfaction. Our Net Promoter Score consistently ranked in the top 10% of all software companies, with customers regularly describing Pulse AI as essential and transformative for their business operation. These weren't the grudging endorsements that enterprise software companies typically received from clients who had invested too much time and money to admit their solutions weren't working. These were enthusiastic recommendations from entrepreneurs who had found genuine value in what we'd built. The contrast with TechFlow's customer relationships was stark. During my time there, customer retention was maintained primarily through switching costs and long-term contracts, rather than genuine satisfaction. Clients complained regularly about the complexity of the system, the difficulty of getting support, and the disconnect between promised features and actual functionality. Our customers, by contrast, frequently told us that Pulse AI had exceeded their expectations and delivered benefits they hadn't even known they needed. The platform's AI-powered insights often revealed customer patterns and opportunities that business owners had never identified through manual analysis. Carlos Martinez, who owned a small chain of automotive repair shops in San Antonio, sent us a detailed case study explaining how Pulse AI had helped him identify the optimal timing for maintenance reminders and promotional offers. I never realized that my customers in different neighborhoods had completely different preference patterns, he wrote. Your platform showed me that downtown customers prefer text message reminders, while suburban customers respond better to email campaigns with detailed service information. Insights like these reinforced our belief that artificial intelligence could democratize business intelligence for smaller companies that couldn't afford dedicated analytics teams or enterprise-level business intelligence platforms. We were giving individual entrepreneurs access to the same kinds of customer insights that large corporations spent millions of dollars to obtain. The success also brought increasing attention from investors and potential acquirers. Venture capital firms that had initially been skeptical of our focus on small businesses were now eager to discuss funding rounds and growth strategies. Strategic acquirers from both the software industry and adjacent markets were expressing interest in partnership discussions. But the most intriguing conversations came from companies that had initially dismissed our target market but were now recognizing the opportunity they'd missed. Several enterprise software companies reached out to discuss potential acquisition offers, claiming they wanted to expand their offerings to serve smaller businesses. The irony of these discussions wasn't lost on me. Companies that had built their entire business models around serving large enterprises were now acknowledging that the small business market represented a massive opportunity. They were essentially admitting that our original thesis had been correct all along. More personally satisfying were the indirect signs that our success was being noticed by my former colleagues at TechFlow. Through my professional network, I learned that TechFlow had launched their own small business initiative and was developing simplified versions of their enterprise platform. The timing wasn't coincidental. Industry analysts had begun writing about the small business software revolution and highlighting companies like Innovate Lab as examples of how traditional enterprise vendors were losing market share to more innovative and customer-focused competitors. Amanda Chen had even given an interview to a trade publication where she discussed the importance of serving businesses of all sizes and claimed that TechFlow had always been committed to democratizing enterprise-level technology. The revisionist history was amusing, but it also validated everything we'd been working toward. The ultimate vindication came when we received an inquiry from Michael Rodriguez, TechFlow's CEO, about potential partnership opportunity. The email was formal and corporate, but the subtext was clear. TechFlow wanted access to our customer base and our technology, because they'd finally realized that the market they'd dismissed was actually incredibly valuable. I forwarded the email to Jen with a simple comment: "I think we've officially made it." Her response was immediate: "We've made it when we acquire them, not when they want to partner with us." At the time, her comment seemed like a joke. TechFlow was still a much larger company with significantly more revenue and resources. The idea that our 18-month-old startup could ever be in a position to acquire an established enterprise software company seemed fantastic. But Jen's comment would prove to be more prophetic than either of us realized. The foundation we were building through customer focus, technical innovation, and genuine market understanding would eventually put us in a position to do exactly what she'd suggested. For now, though, we were content to continue building something meaningful for customers who appreciated what we were trying to accomplish. The recognition and growth were gratifying, but they were byproducts of our primary mission, proving that business success could come from solving real problems for real people, regardless of whether those people fit traditional definitions of valuable customer. Every milestone we achieved, every satisfied customer we served, and every industry recognition we received reinforced the same fundamental truth. Amanda Chen and her colleagues at TechFlow hadn't just been wrong about my abilities, they'd been wrong about what makes a business truly successful. The acquisition offer came on a Thursday afternoon in March, delivered through a formal letter from Goldman Sachs, representing TechFlow Solutions. The irony of the timing wasn't lost on me. It was exactly 2 years to the day since I'd walked out of TechFlow's Seattle office, carrying my personal belongings in a cardboard box, and Amanda Chen's dismissive words ringing in my ears. The letter was addressed to Jessica Martinez, Chief Executive Officer, Innovate Lab Technologies, and the formal tone couldn't disguise the desperation behind the offer. TechFlow was proposing to acquire our company for $84.7 million in cash and stock, valuing Innovate Lab at nearly twice what industry analysts had estimated just 6 months earlier. Jen and I read the letter together in our corner office at Innovate Lab's headquarters, a sleek 15,000 square foot space in Austin's Domain District that housed our team of 68 employees. The contrast with our humble beginnings at the hub couldn't have been more dramatic, but the feeling of possibility and innovation remained exactly the same. "They're offering us almost $1 billion, Jen said, setting the letter down on our conference table.
That's generational wealth for both of us, plus equity stakes for every employee who's been with us from the beginning." I nodded, studying the financial terms and acquisition structure. The offer was generous by any objective measure, but reading between the lines revealed TechFlow's true motivations. They weren't acquiring us because they believed in our vision. They were acquiring us because we'd proven their original assumptions wrong, and they needed our customer base to remain competitive. The due diligence process that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced in the corporate world. Instead of the adversarial negotiations, typical of most acquisitions, TechFlow's team approached us with what could only be described as deference. They needed us more than we needed them, and everyone in the room understood this fundamental power dynamic. During the first meeting at TechFlow's Seattle headquarters, I found myself sitting across from Amanda Chen in the same conference room where she'd dismissed my original proposal 3 years earlier. The symmetry was almost too perfect to be real. Amanda, now bearing the title of Senior Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, was leading TechFlow's acquisition team and trying to convince me that joining their company would be beneficial for both organizations. "Jessica," she said, using the professional tone I remembered from our previous interactions, "I want to acknowledge that you've built something truly remarkable. The market opportunity you identified has proven to be exactly as significant as you originally proposed." The words were carefully chosen and diplomatically delivered, but they represented a complete reversal of everything Amanda had said about my abilities and market understanding. She was essentially admitting that she'd been wrong about the small business opportunity, wrong about customer demand, and wrong about my potential as a business leader. I appreciate the recognition, I replied, maintaining the same professional demeanor. But I'm curious about what's changed TechFlow's perspective on serving smaller businesses. When I proposed this market opportunity 3 years ago, the response was quite different. Amanda's expression flickered slightly, betraying the discomfort she felt in acknowledging her previous position. Markets evolve, and so do strategic priorities. What matters now is finding the best way to serve customers who need these solutions. The conversation continued for 2 hours, covering technical integration challenges, cultural alignment questions, and post-acquisition organizational structure. Throughout the discussion, I couldn't help but notice how carefully Amanda avoided taking responsibility for her previous dismissal of the very market opportunity that had made Innovate Lab valuable enough to acquire. But the most revealing moment came when Michael Rodriguez, TechFlow's CEO, joined the meeting to discuss the strategic rationale for the acquisition. His explanation was a masterclass in corporate revisionist history. TechFlow has always been committed to serving businesses of all sizes, he said, apparently forgetting his previous statements about focusing exclusively on enterprise clients. The challenge has been finding the right approach to deliver enterprise-level capabilities to smaller organizations. Your platform has solved that challenge in ways that we believe will benefit the entire market. I nodded politely while mentally cataloging the contradictions between his current statements and his previous dismissal of small business opportunity. The cognitive dissonance was remarkable. He was simultaneously claiming credit for recognizing an opportunity that he'd actively rejected when I'd first proposed it. The financial terms of the acquisition were structured to maximize tax efficiency and ensure that key employees remained with the combined organization. Jen and I would each receive approximately $200 million in cash, plus equity stakes that could be worth significantly more depending on the combined company's performance. Every Innovate Lab employee would receive substantial retention bonuses and equity grants that reflected their contributions to our success. But beyond the financial considerations, the acquisition offered something even more valuable: the opportunity to prove that our approach to customer service and product development could transform an entire industry. Instead of remaining a successful but relatively small player in the customer management market, we could leverage TechFlow's resources and customer base to scale our impact exponentially. The due diligence process revealed just how dramatically Innovate Lab had disrupted the established market dynamics. TechFlow's customer retention rates had been declining for 18 months, as small and medium-sized businesses migrated to more user-friendly alternatives. Several of TechFlow's largest enterprise clients had begun evaluating our platform for their subsidiary companies, threatening to reduce their overall spending on TechFlow's solution. More significantly, our rapid growth had inspired dozens of other startups to enter the small business software market with similar value propositions. The entire industry was shifting towards simplicity, affordability, and customer-focused design, exactly the principles that Amanda Chen had once dismissed as unrealistic. The negotiation process stretched over 3 months, with teams of lawyers, accountants, and industry experts analyzing every aspect of both companies' operations. Throughout these discussions, I maintained regular communication with our customer community, ensuring that they understood how the acquisition would benefit their businesses. The response from our customers was overwhelmingly positive. Rather than worrying about changes to our platform or service quality, they were excited about the resources that TechFlow's backing would provide for additional features and expanded capability. Many customers who had been hesitant to fully commit to a startup platform were now confident that our solutions would have the stability and support they needed for long-term business planning. Maria Santos, the event planner from Dallas who had sent us the handwritten thank you note, called personally to express her excitement about the acquisition. "I've been telling everyone about Pulse AI for months," she said, "but some of my colleagues were worried about relying on a small company for such an important business function. Now they'll have no excuse not to try it." The acquisition announcement was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in June, coordinated with press releases, investor calls, and customer communications. The night before, Jen and I sat in our office reviewing the final documentation and reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this moment. 3 years ago, did you ever imagine we'd be sitting here preparing to sell our company for nearly $1 billion? Jen asked, signing the last of the signature pages. I thought about the question seriously before answering. Honestly, no. 3 years ago, I was just trying to prove that I wasn't a naive idealist who didn't understand how business worked. I never imagined that proving them wrong would lead to this. The acquisition announcement generated immediate and widespread media coverage. TechCrunch, which had first recognized our potential 2 years earlier, featured the story as their lead article with the headline, "David Beats Goliath Small Business Software Startup Acquired by Enterprise Giant." The article praised our customer-focused approach and cited industry analysts who predicted that the acquisition would accelerate the transformation of the entire enterprise software market. But the coverage that meant the most to me came from the Austin Business Journal, which focused on the local impact of our success. The article highlighted how Innovate Labs' growth had contributed to Austin's reputation as a startup-friendly city, and quoted several local entrepreneurs who credited our success with inspiring their own business venture. Jessica Martinez and Jennifer Wilson proved that you don't need to move to Silicon Valley or New York to build a world-class technology company. The article quoted Carlos Rodriguez, our early angel investor. They showed that Austin has everything necessary to compete with any tech hub in the world. The personal messages and congratulations that flooded in over the following weeks were overwhelming in their warmth and sincerity. Customers, employees, investors, and industry colleagues shared stories about how our success had inspired their own entrepreneurial ambitions or validated their decisions to focus on underserved markets. Maya, my best friend from Seattle, sent a video message that made me cry with its combination of pride and humor. I remember sitting in my kitchen 3 years ago, watching you cry about being dismissed by people who couldn't see your potential, she said. Now those same people are paying you almost $1 billion to join their company. I don't know if that's karma or poetry, but it's definitely perfect. The integration process between Innovate Lab and TechFlow was structured to preserve the culture and customer focus that had made our platform successful, while leveraging TechFlow's resources for accelerated growth. Rather than being absorbed into TechFlow's existing organizational structure, Innovate Lab would operate as a semi-autonomous division with its own leadership, development teams, and customer support operation. I accepted the position of Senior Vice President of Small Business Solutions, with responsibility for expanding our platform's capabilities and extending our approach to additional market segments. Jen became TechFlow's Chief Technology Officer for Innovation, leading the development of AI-powered features across all of the company's product lines. The role reversal was delicious in its completeness. Amanda Chen, who had once questioned my understanding of enterprise-level thinking, now reported to me as Director of Strategic Partnership. Michael Rodriguez, who had dismissed the small business market as unworthy of serious attention, now regularly cited our customer acquisition success in investor presentations and industry conferences. But the most satisfying aspect of the integration wasn't the organizational hierarchy. It was the opportunity to transform TechFlow's approach to customer service and product development. Within 6 months of the acquisition, we had implemented customer feedback systems, user experience research programs, and agile development processes that revolutionized how the entire company approached product innovation. The results were immediate and dramatic. TechFlow's customer satisfaction scores improved by 40% within the first year of integration. Customer retention rates increased significantly as the company adopted our emphasis on solving real problems rather than simply adding features. Most importantly, revenue growth accelerated as the combined company gained access to market segments that neither organization could have served effectively alone. The transformation wasn't limited to metrics and financial performance. The cultural changes were equally profound. TechFlow's engineering teams began conducting regular customer interviews and user testing sessions. Marketing campaigns focused on customer success stories rather than technical specifications. Sales processes emphasized understanding customer needs rather than pushing predefined solutions. Amanda Chen, to her credit, embraced these changes with genuine enthusiasm. During one of our quarterly reviews, She acknowledged how much the acquisition had taught her about customer-focused business development. "I spent years thinking that complexity was synonymous with value," she said, reviewing customer feedback reports from our integrated platform. "But watching how our customers respond to simplified solutions has completely changed my perspective on what makes software truly valuable." The admission was gracious and professional, but it also represented a fundamental shift in thinking that extended far beyond our specific industry. The success of Innovate Lab had proven that underserved markets often represent the most significant opportunities for innovation and growth. 18 months after the acquisition, we launched TechFlow Connect, a comprehensive platform that applied our customer-focused design principles to enterprise clients. The product combined the sophisticated capabilities that large organizations required with the intuitive interfaces and streamlined workflows that had made Pulse AI successful. The market response exceeded all projections. Within 12 months, TechFlow Connect had acquired over 200 enterprise clients and generated more than $300 million in annual recurring revenue. Industry analysts credited the platform with revolutionizing enterprise software design and cited it as evidence that customer experience was becoming the primary differentiator in business-to-business technology market. But the achievement that meant the most to me was the continued growth of our small business customer base. The resources and stability that TechFlow provided had allowed us to expand Pulse AI's capabilities while maintaining the simplicity and affordability that our original customers valued. We now served over 50,000 small businesses across every major industry, from restaurants and retail stores to consulting firms and manufacturing companies. The customer success stories continued to pour in, each one reinforcing the fundamental truth that had motivated our original vision. Small businesses weren't inferior customers who deserved inferior solutions. They were innovative, resourceful entrepreneurs who needed tools designed specifically for their unique challenges and opportunities. Patricia Hernandez, the marketing agency owner I'd interviewed during my first week in Austin, sent a handwritten card on the second anniversary of the acquisition. "Pulse AI has been transformative for our business. We've grown from 37 clients to over 150, and I honestly don't think that would have been possible without the customer relationship tools you created. Thank you for building something that actually works for real businesses." Stories like Patricia's reminded me why we'd started this journey in the first place. The financial success and industry recognition were gratifying, but they were secondary to the satisfaction of knowing that our work had genuinely improved people's lives and businesses. The broader impact of our success extended far beyond our specific company or industry. The acquisition had demonstrated that startups could successfully challenge established players by focusing on underserved markets and customer-centric innovation. Dozens of other entrepreneurs had cited Innovate Lab's success as inspiration for their own ventures targeting overlooked customer segments. Austin's startup ecosystem had also benefited significantly from our success. The acquisition had attracted additional venture capital investment to the city, and several other local startups had achieved their own successful exits in the years following our announcement. The city's reputation as a technology hub had been enhanced by proof that world-class companies could be built and scaled outside of traditional tech centers. On a personal level, the journey had taught me lessons about resilience, vision, and the importance of staying true to your convictions even when others question your judgment. The dismissal and discouragement I'd experienced at TechFlow had been painful, but it had also been necessary for developing the confidence and determination needed to build something truly innovative. The final vindication came during TechFlow's annual customer conference, where I delivered the keynote address on the future of business technology. The audience included many of the same industry leaders who had once dismissed small businesses as unworthy of serious attention. Now they were eager to hear about strategies for serving markets they'd previously ignored. "The greatest opportunities in business," I told the audience, "are often found in the places where established wisdom says there's no value. The customers who don't fit traditional models may actually represent the most significant potential for innovation and growth." The standing ovation that followed was gratifying, but the real satisfaction came from knowing that our success had fundamentally changed how the entire industry thought about customer service and market opportunity. As I stood on the stage, looking out at an audience that included Amanda Chen,
Michael Rodriguez and dozens of other industry leaders who had once questioned my vision. I realized that the journey from dismissed employee to successful entrepreneur had been about more than personal vindication. It had been about proving that business success comes from solving real problems for real people, regardless of whether those people fit conventional definitions of valuable customers. The acquisition had been the culmination of that journey, but it wasn't the end of the story. With TechFlow's resources and our customer-focused approach, we were now positioned to transform how businesses of all sizes thought about customer relationships and technology solutions. Amanda Chen might have once said that some people just aren't cut out for the big leagues, but she'd been measuring the wrong game entirely. The real big leagues weren't about serving the largest clients or generating the highest margins. They were about creating solutions that genuinely improved people's lives and businesses. And by that measure, we'd been playing in the big leagues all along. The boardroom at Meridian Tower in Portland was everything you'd expect from a Fortune 500 headquarters: polished mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the Columbia River, and the kind of intimidating corporate atmosphere designed to make visitors feel small. But as I sat at the head of that table reviewing the final acquisition documents that would make Innovate Lab the owner of TechFlow Solutions, I felt anything but small. 3.5 years had passed since the initial acquisition that brought our companies together, and the transformation had exceeded every projection we'd made during those early integration meetings. What started as TechFlow acquiring a promising startup had evolved into something far more significant: a complete reversal of corporate hierarchy that would reshape the entire enterprise software industry. The numbers told the story in stark detail. Innovate Lab's customer-focused approach had generated $2.3 billion in new revenue for the combined organization, while TechFlow's traditional enterprise division had seen consistent decline as clients migrated toward more intuitive, affordable solutions. Our small business platform now served over 200,000 companies globally, with expansion into international markets exceeding all growth projections. But the real transformation went deeper than financial metrics. The cultural shift toward customer centricity had fundamentally changed how the entire organization operated. Employee satisfaction scores had increased by 65% as teams found renewed purpose in solving genuine customer problems, rather than maintaining complex systems that nobody truly loved using. Jen Wilson, now serving as Chief Executive Officer of the combined entity, had orchestrated this transformation with the same strategic brilliance she'd brought to our original startup. Her ability to scale innovative culture while maintaining operational excellence had attracted attention from business schools and management consultants worldwide. "The irony," she said during our final preparation meeting before the ownership transfer, "is that TechFlow's shareholders are actually excited about this reversal. They're making more money by giving up control than they ever did when they were calling the shots." She was absolutely right. The board of directors, who had initially been skeptical of our customer-focused approach, were now our strongest advocate. They'd watched their investment returns climb steadily as we applied small business insights to enterprise solutions, creating hybrid platforms that delivered sophisticated capabilities through simplified interfaces. Amanda Chen entered the boardroom exactly 15 minutes before our scheduled meeting, carrying herself with the professional composure she'd maintained throughout our working relationship. Our dynamic had evolved considerably since those early days when she questioned my understanding of business fundamentals. She now served as my Director of Strategic Development, a role she'd embraced with genuine enthusiasm once she understood how customer focus could drive revenue growth. "The final documentation looks clean," she reported, setting a bound folder on the table. "Legal has reviewed everything twice, and the regulatory approvals came through this morning. We're ready to proceed whenever you give the signal." The acquisition structure was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of cash or stock transfers, we were implementing what financial analysts called a value-based ownership reversal. Innovate Labs board would assume controlling interest in TechFlow based on demonstrated value creation over the previous 3 years. Existing TechFlow shareholders would retain significant equity stakes, but operational control would transfer to the leadership team that had actually driven the company's transformation. Michael Rodriguez arrived precisely on time, accompanied by his legal counsel and the investment bankers who had structured the original acquisition 4 years earlier. His evolution from skeptical CEO to collaborative partner had been one of the most remarkable aspects of our integration process. The man who once dismissed small businesses as unworthy of serious attention now regularly spoke at conferences about the importance of serving underserved markets. "Jessica," he said, extending his hand with genuine warmth, "I want to congratulate you on everything you've accomplished. When we first acquired Innovate Lab, I thought we were buying a promising technology. I didn't realize we were actually acquiring the future of our entire industry." The comment was gracious, but it also represented a fundamental misunderstanding that had characterized TechFlow's original approach to the acquisition. They hadn't purchased a technology, they'd purchased a completely different philosophy about how businesses should serve their customers. The signing ceremony proceeded with the formal efficiency typical of major corporate transactions. Lawyers reviewed final clauses, investment bankers confirmed financial terms, and executives added their signatures to documents that would be studied in business schools for decades to come. But the real significance of the moment transcended legal technicalities and ownership structures. This wasn't just about corporate control, it was about validation of an entirely different approach to business leadership and customer service. As I signed the final document that officially transferred control of TechFlow Solutions to Innovate Lab, I thought about the conversation that had started this entire journey. Amanda's dismissive words about small businesses and my supposed lack of enterprise-level thinking had seemed crushing at the time. Now they felt like the catalyst for something far more important than personal vindication. "The transition should be seamless from an operational perspective," Jen explained to the assembled group. "Our customers won't notice any changes in service or platform functionality. If anything, they'll benefit from additional resources we can now allocate toward innovation and expansion." The customer communication strategy we'd developed emphasized continuity and improvement rather than dramatic change. Our research showed that both small business and enterprise clients valued stability and predictability, so we'd structured the ownership transfer to minimize disruption while maximizing long-term benefit. The media response to the acquisition announcement was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Technology publications praised the transaction as evidence that customer-focused startups could not only compete with established enterprises, but actually reverse traditional power dynamics through superior value creation. Forbes featured the story as their cover article with the headline "The Customer Revolution: How a Dismissed Startup Employee Built an Empire by Serving the Underserved." The article traced our journey from rejection to acquisition, highlighting how focusing on neglected market segments had created opportunities for exponential growth. But the coverage that resonated most personally came from local Austin publications that had followed our story from the beginning. The Austin Business Journal published a retrospective piece that quoted dozens of local entrepreneurs who credited our success with inspiring their own ventures and contributing to the city's emergence as a major technology hub. Jessica Martinez and Jennifer Wilson proved that you don't need to move to Silicon Valley or compromise your values to build a world-class company. The article quoted Lisa Rodriguez, who had founded her own customer service software startup 2 years after our initial success. They showed that the best business opportunities often come from listening to customers that everyone else ignores. The acquisition celebration that evening was held at the same Austin restaurant where Jen and I had first outlined our business plan 4 years earlier. The contrast between that nervous initial conversation and this moment of complete vindication felt almost surreal in its completeness. Our entire team was there, 68 employees who had contributed their talents, energy, and creativity to building something that nobody thought was possible. The diversity of backgrounds and experiences represented in that room reflected our commitment to hiring people who understood customer service, because they'd experienced it from the customer perspective. Maya flew in from Seattle for the celebration, bringing with her a bottle of champagne she'd been saving since the day I first told her about leaving TechFlow. "I've been waiting 4 years to open this," she said, embracing me with tears in her eyes. "You did it, Jess. You actually did." The speeches that night focused not on financial achievements or industry recognition, but on the customers whose lives and businesses had been improved by what we'd built. Team members shared stories about small business owners who had expanded their operations, enterprise clients who had streamlined their processes, and entrepreneurs who had found success using tools that actually understood their needs. Carlos Rodriguez, our first angel investor, delivered remarks that captured the broader significance of our journey. 4 years ago, Jessica walked into my office with a crazy idea about serving customers that everyone else had written off. Tonight, that crazy idea owns one of the largest software companies in the world, but the real victory isn't about valuations or market share. It's about proving that business success comes from solving real problems for real people. The personal messages and congratulations that continued arriving over the following weeks confirmed that our story had resonated far beyond the technology industry. Entrepreneurs from diverse sectors shared how our example had encouraged them to pursue their own visions despite skepticism from established players in their markets. Dr. Sarah Kim, a former medical researcher who had left academia to develop affordable diagnostic tools for rural healthcare providers, wrote about how our success had given her confidence to challenge pharmaceutical companies that dismissed her target market as unprofitable. James Thompson, who had started a financial services company focused on underbanked communities, credited our story with helping him secure funding from investors who initially questioned whether serving low-income customers could generate sustainable returns.
The pattern was consistent across industries and geographies. Entrepreneurs who had been told their target markets weren't valuable enough to pursue were finding inspiration and validation in our example of how serving underserved communities could create extraordinary business opportunities. But the feedback that moved me most came from Amanda Chen herself, delivered during a private conversation 6 months after the ownership transfer. We were reviewing quarterly performance metrics in my office when she set down her reports and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen from her before. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "Not just for how I treated your ideas when you worked for us, but for how fundamentally wrong I was about what makes a business successful. I spent years thinking that complexity meant sophistication and that expensive automatically meant better. Watching you build this company taught me that the opposite is usually true." The apology was unexpected and completely unnecessary from a professional standpoint, but it represented something more important than personal closure. It demonstrated the cultural transformation that had occurred not just within our organization, but throughout the entire industry. The strategic implications of our acquisition extended far beyond our specific market segment. Other established technology companies began reevaluating their own customer strategies, questioning whether their focus on high-margin enterprise clients had caused them to miss larger opportunities in underserved markets. Within 18 months of our ownership transition, 3 major enterprise software companies had launched simplified platforms targeting small and medium-sized businesses. 2 had acquired customer-focused startups similar to our original model. 1 had restructured their entire product development process around user experience research and customer feedback integration. The competitive landscape that emerged was dramatically different from the environment we'd encountered when starting Innovate Lab. Instead of a few dominant players serving large enterprise clients while ignoring everyone else, the market now included dozens of companies competing to provide better, simpler, more affordable solutions to businesses of all sizes. This transformation validated our original thesis that serving underserved markets wasn't just morally satisfying, it was strategically brilliant. By focusing on customers that established players ignored, we had created a sustainable competitive advantage that ultimately allowed us to succeed in markets we'd never originally targeted. The international expansion that followed our domestic success demonstrated how customer-focused principles could transcend cultural and geographic boundaries. Our platform launched in 12 countries within 2 years, adapting to local business practices while maintaining the core simplicity and affordability that had made us successful in the United States. The European rollout was particularly gratifying because it involved partnerships with local small business organizations that had been advocating for better technology solutions for years. Rather than trying to impose American business models on international markets, we worked with local entrepreneurs to understand their specific challenges and adapt our platform accordingly. Maria Gonzalez, who founded a marketing cooperative for women-owned businesses in Barcelona, became one of our most effective international advocates. Innovate Lab didn't just bring us better software, she explained during a user conference in Madrid. They brought us a company that actually understands that small businesses are the backbone of every economy, not just obstacles to serving larger clients. The academic recognition that accompanied our business success provided additional validation of the principles that had guided our strategy from the beginning. Harvard Business School developed a case study analyzing how customer-focused innovation could disrupt established market hierarchy. Stanford's Graduate School of Business invited me to deliver a lecture series on entrepreneurship and market opportunity identification. But the recognition that meant the most came from small business organizations and entrepreneurship programs that cited our story as evidence that any market deemed too small by established players might actually represent enormous untapped potential. The Small Business Administration featured our success in their annual report on innovation and economic development, highlighting how companies that serve small businesses often generate disproportionate economic impact through job creation and community development. The Kauffman Foundation included our journey in their research on high-growth entrepreneurship, noting how our focus on underserved customers had created a business model that was both profitable and socially beneficial. These academic and policy endorsements reinforced our belief that business success and social impact weren't competing priorities. They were complementary aspects of building companies that created genuine value for everyone involved. The philanthropic initiatives we launched following the acquisition allowed us to extend our impact beyond direct customer service. The Innovate Lab Foundation provided grants and technical assistance to entrepreneurs in developing countries who were building technology solutions for their local market. Our Small Business Success Scholarship Program funded business education for individuals from underrepresented communities who wanted to start their own companies but lacked access to traditional financing or business network. Most importantly, we established innovation labs in Austin, Seattle, and Portland that provided resources and mentorship for early-stage entrepreneurs who were pursuing ideas that established companies had dismissed as impractical or unprofitable. These programs reflected our conviction that the principles that had made Innovate Labs successful, customer focus, market inclusion, and innovation through simplicity, could benefit entrepreneurs across industries and geography. The personal transformation that accompanied this professional journey was equally significant. The insecurity and self-doubt that had characterized my final months at TechFlow had been replaced by confidence grounded in proven value creation rather than external validation. The dismissive comments about my lack of enterprise-level thinking now seemed like artifacts from a different era, when business sophistication was measured by complexity rather than customer satisfaction. The real sophistication lay in building solutions that worked so intuitively that customers forgot they were using software at all. Standing in my office 5 years after leaving TechFlow, looking out over downtown Austin and the company we'd built from nothing but conviction and hard work, I reflected on how dramatically wrong Amanda Chen had been about my potential and about what constituted real business success. The empire we'd built wasn't constructed on exclusion, complexity, or artificial scarcity. It was built on inclusion, simplicity, and abundance, the radical idea that business success could come from making valuable tools accessible to everyone who needed them, regardless of their size or sophistication. Every customer we served, every employee we hired, and every competitor we inspired to focus on previously ignored markets validated the same fundamental truth: the biggest opportunities in business are often hiding in the places where conventional wisdom says there's no value. Amanda Chen might have thought I wasn't cut out for the big leagues, but she'd been measuring the wrong game entirely. The real big leagues weren't about serving the largest clients or generating the highest margins. They were about creating solutions that genuinely improved the world. And by that measure, we'd been playing in the big leagues all along. The invitation arrived on embossed stationery, delivered by courier to my corner office overlooking Lady Bird Lake. The Seattle Technology Leadership Awards Committee was requesting my presence as their keynote speaker for the annual gala, recognizing innovation and excellence in the Pacific Northwest technology sector. The irony of the timing was exquisite. Exactly 6 years after walking out of TechFlow's downtown Seattle headquarters, with nothing but a cardboard box of personal belongings and Amanda Chen's dismissive words echoing in my mind. The gala would be held at the Four Seasons Hotel, the same venue where TechFlow had hosted their annual client appreciation events during my tenure there. I remembered standing in the background at those gatherings, watching Amanda work the room while senior executives discussed million-dollar enterprise deals and dismissed smaller opportunities as beneath their attention. Now I would be standing at the podium, addressing an audience that included many of those same executives who had once questioned whether I understood how real business worked. The speech I prepared focused on the unexpected wisdom that emerges when you stop trying to fit into existing definitions of success and start creating your own. The central theme was simple but revolutionary. The customers that established companies ignore often represent the most significant opportunities for innovation and growth. What looks like limitation from inside an established organization often looks like liberation from the perspective of someone willing to challenge conventional assumptions. Flying into Seattle 2 days before the event, I was struck by how different the city felt now that I was returning as a visitor rather than a resident seeking approval. The skyline remained unchanged, but my relationship to it had been completely transformed. This wasn't the place where I'd struggled to prove my worth. It was simply another city where I happened to be conducting business. Maya met me at the airport, her excitement visible from across the baggage claim area. She'd followed our entire journey from her front row seat in Seattle, watching through social media posts, video calls, and annual visits to Austin, as we built something that nobody thought was possible. Her support had been unwavering through every milestone and setback, providing the kind of friendship that entrepreneurs rarely find outside their immediate family. I still can't believe you're giving the keynote at the same event where TechFlow used to showcase their biggest accounts, she said as we drove through familiar neighborhoods toward downtown. Remember when you used to come home from those events feeling invisible? Now you're the main attraction. The hotel where I was staying was walking distance from TechFlow's office building, and I found myself drawn to make the trip on foot rather than taking a taxi. The route took me past coffee shops where I'd grabbed hurried breakfasts before early meetings, restaurants where I'd eaten solitary dinners while working late on proposals that would ultimately be dismissed, and the bus stop where I'd waited countless mornings while mentally rehearsing presentations for colleagues who were already convinced that my ideas weren't worth serious consideration. Standing outside the glass towers that housed TechFlow's Seattle headquarters, I felt an unexpected wave of gratitude rather than resentment. Those difficult years hadn't been wasted time. They'd been essential preparation for everything that followed. The dismissal and frustration I'd experienced had forced me to develop independence, resilience, and absolute clarity about what I wanted to accomplish. The current TechFlow offices looked smaller than I remembered, occupying just 3 floors of a building that had once seemed impossibly impressive. According to industry reports, the company had downsized significantly since our acquisition, consolidating operations and focusing on their remaining enterprise clients, while their small business market share continued declining in favor of more customer-focused alternatives. Amanda Chen had relocated to Austin 18 months earlier to work more closely with our integrated operations team. Her transformation from skeptical manager to enthusiastic advocate had been one of the most remarkable aspects of our corporate evolution. She now led initiatives to identify underserved market segments across all our product lines, bringing the same analytical rigor she'd once applied to dismissing opportunities to the task of discovering them. The evening before my keynote address, the awards committee hosted a private reception for speakers and honorees. The guest list read like a directory of Pacific Northwest technology leadership, CEOs of successful startups, venture capital partners, university researchers, and senior executives from established companies, including several of my former TechFlow colleagues. Ryan Brooks approached me during the cocktail hour, extending his hand with a combination of professional courtesy and genuine curiosity. He'd remained at TechFlow through the various reorganizations, eventually becoming their director of enterprise sales. His career trajectory had been solid but unremarkable, following the traditional corporate advancement path that I'd once thought represented the pinnacle of professional success. "Jessica, congratulations on everything you've accomplished," he said, his tone carrying more warmth than our interactions at TechFlow had ever included. "I have to admit, when you left to start your own company, I thought you were making a huge mistake. The startup world seemed so risky compared to the stability of working for an established organization." His comment reflected the conventional wisdom that had dominated our thinking at TechFlow. that security came from working within existing systems rather than creating new ones. But experience had taught me that real security came from building something valuable enough that others would pay for it, regardless of whether that something fit traditional business category. The risk calculation is different when you're solving problems that genuinely need solutions, I replied. Established companies often provide an illusion of security while actually being quite vulnerable to disruption from organizations that better understand customer needs. The conversation continued for 20 minutes, covering topics that would have been impossible to discuss during our TechFlow days: entrepreneurship, market opportunity identification, customer-focused innovation, and the cultural changes that were reshaping the entire technology industry. Ryan listened with the intensity of someone trying to understand paradigms that hadn't existed when we'd worked together. Michael Rodriguez arrived at the reception fashionably late, accompanied by his wife and the kind of entourage that successful CEOs accumulate at industry events. He looked older than I remembered, carrying the weight of leading a company through significant market transitions. His greeting was warm and genuine, reflecting the collaborative relationship we'd developed during our integration process. "I want you to know," he said during our brief conversation, "that acquiring Innovate Lab was the best decision TechFlow ever made. Even though we lost control of the combined entity, you taught us that customer focus isn't just good ethics, it's good business strategy." The comment was gracious, but it also revealed how fundamentally he'd misunderstood the acquisition dynamics. TechFlow hadn't lost control because of some unforeseen circumstance. They'd lost control because their approach to business had been systematically less effective than ours. The ownership reversal wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of superior value creation. The keynote address took place in the hotel's main ballroom, filled with 800 technology leaders representing every major company and startup in the Pacific Northwest. As I walked to the podium, I spotted familiar faces scattered throughout the audience: former colleagues, industry contacts, and competitors who had watched our journey from various perspectives. The speech began with the story of my last day at TechFlow, when Amanda Chen's dismissive comments about my lack of enterprise-level thinking had crystallized my decision to leave corporate employment and start building something new. But rather than focusing on personal vindication, I used that experience as a launching point for discussing broader themes about innovation, market opportunity, and customer service. "The most dangerous assumption in business," I told the audience, "is that current customers represent the only customers worth serving." When established companies dismiss potential markets as too small, too unsophisticated, or too price-sensitive, they're often identifying the exact opportunities that will define the next generation of industry leaders. The presentation included case studies from multiple industries where companies had achieved extraordinary success by serving markets that traditional players had ignored. The pattern was remarkably consistent across sectors: telecommunications companies that focused on rural communities, financial services firms that served underbanked populations, healthcare organizations that prioritized accessibility over profitability. "The customers that everyone else ignores," I continued, "are often the most loyal, most innovative, and most growth-oriented segments in any market. They become loyal because so few companies treat them well. They become innovative because they're forced to find creative solutions to problems that established providers won't address. And they become growth-oriented because success requires constant adaptation and improvement." The audience response was immediate and engaged, with questions that revealed how many technology leaders were reconsidering their own market strategies based on examples of companies that had succeeded by expanding rather than restricting their customer focus. The conversation continued long after the formal presentation ended, with entrepreneurs and executives sharing their own experiences of discovering opportunities in overlooked market segments. But the moment that meant the most to me came during the awards ceremony that concluded the evening. The committee presented me with their Innovation Leadership Award, recognizing transformative contributions to customer-focused business development and market inclusion strategy. The citation specifically mentioned how our success had inspired dozens of other companies to reevaluate their assumptions about market value and customer potential. Standing at the podium with the award in hand, looking out over an audience that included many of the same people who had once questioned my understanding of business fundamentals,
I felt a profound sense of completion rather than vindication. The journey from dismissed employee to industry leader had never been about proving other people wrong. It had been about proving that alternative approaches to business could create value for everyone involved. The flight back to Austin the next morning provided time for reflection on how dramatically my relationship with success had evolved over the past 6 years. During my TechFlow days, success had felt like something external that needed to be earned through conformity to existing standards and approval from established authorities. Now success felt like something internal that emerged naturally from solving real problems for real people. The recognition and industry leadership were gratifying, but they were byproducts of customer focus, rather than goals in themselves. The real satisfaction came from the daily evidence that our platform was helping small business owners grow their companies, enterprise clients streamline their operations, and entrepreneurs around the world build solutions for previously ignored market segments. The transformation of our industry continued accelerating in the months following the Seattle keynote. Major consulting firms began offering services specifically designed to help established companies identify and serve underserved market segments. Business schools introduced courses on inclusive market development and customer-focused innovation strategies. Investment firms started actively seeking startups that targeted markets traditional players had dismissed as unprofitable. This institutional recognition validated our conviction that serving everyone wasn't just morally satisfying, it was strategically superior. Companies that expanded their definition of valuable customers consistently outperformed those that maintained exclusive focus on high-margin segments. The international expansion of these principles proved even more significant than their domestic adoption. Our platform now operated in 37 countries, adapted to local business practices while maintaining core commitments to simplicity, affordability, and accessibility. Each new market revealed additional opportunities for companies willing to challenge conventional assumptions about customer value and market potential. The partnership program we launched allowed local entrepreneurs to build complementary services using our platform as a foundation. Rather than trying to control every aspect of customer experience, we provided tools that empowered others to create solutions for their specific communities and industries. This approach generated innovations that our internal team never could have developed alone. Local partners created specialized features for restaurants in Bangkok, consulting firms in São Paulo, retail stores in Lagos, and manufacturing companies in Mumbai. Each adaptation expanded our understanding of how customer-focused principles could transcend cultural and economic boundaries. The academic research that emerged from studying our business model provided additional validation of customer inclusion strategy. Harvard Business Review published a comprehensive analysis of how companies that served broader market segments achieved higher growth rates, greater innovation levels, and more sustainable competitive advantages than those that maintained exclusive focus on premium customer. The study tracked 50 companies across 10 industries over a 5-year period, comparing performance metrics between organizations that expanded their customer base and those that concentrated on high-value segments. The results were unambiguous. Inclusion strategies consistently outperformed exclusion strategies across every meaningful business metric. But the research that resonated most personally examined the career trajectories of employees who left established companies to start customer-focused ventures. The study found that these entrepreneurs achieved higher success rates, greater job satisfaction, and more significant social impact than comparable individuals who remained within traditional corporate structure. The findings suggested that leaving TechFlow hadn't been a risky career move. It had been the most rational decision possible for someone who understood that customer needs were evolving faster than established companies could adapt. Standing in my office 6 years after that transformative moment in TechFlow's break room, I realized that Amanda Chen's dismissive comments had been the catalyst for something far more important than personal vindication. They had forced me to articulate and defend a completely different philosophy of business success, one based on inclusion rather than exclusion. simplicity rather than complexity, and customer value rather than corporate convenience. The empire we had built validated every assumption that traditional business wisdom had taught me to question. Small businesses weren't inferior customers who deserved inferior solutions, they were innovative entrepreneurs who needed tools designed specifically for their unique challenges and opportunities. Simple interfaces weren't signs of unsophisticated thinking, they were evidence of sophisticated understanding of how people actually wanted to interact with technology. Most importantly, serving everyone wasn't a compromise that reduced profitability. It was a strategy that created sustainable competitive advantages by building genuine loyalty among customers who had rarely experienced companies that understood their needs. Amanda Chen might have thought that some people just aren't cut out for the big leagues, but she had been measuring the wrong game entirely. The real big leagues weren't about excluding potential customers, they were about finding innovative ways to include everyone who could benefit from what you had to offer, and by that measure we had been playing in the big leagues all along. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.